Hello everyone, my name is Kevin Trainer. I'm the resource teacher for the gifted here at Cardinal Elementary School. And this video will provide information about the screening and identification process for gifted services here in Arlington Public Schools. We'll provide an overview to begin of the areas of identification that students can be screened for. The first would be considered specific academic aptitudes. This can begin as early as kindergarten and go right through 12th grade. Those four core areas are English, math, science, and social studies. When students are a little bit older, starting in 3rd grade, they can be screened for visual or performing arts. And those two big areas, again, would be visual arts or general music. So a little bit about the screening process and kind of what it involves. The screening process happens each year. I meet with grade level teachers from kindergarten straight through 5th grade, and we look at the entirety of the population here at Cardinal and develop a pool of candidates based on needs for gifted services. And we'll talk a lot about this as the referral process. And the referral is essentially a document we use that say we would like to have this child enter the screening process and be evaluated for determining a need for gifted services. That referral can happen from a classroom teacher, a member on staff. It may come from a community member, typically a parent or a guardian. Other points of entry for the referral process could be a student self-referral, or a student can refer another student for services as well. The deadline to initiate the process is typically April 1st each year. Now, April 1st this year is the first Saturday of spring break, so we might have a little bit of latitude. And if family intended to do it right before spring break, but lost track of things, if they come back right on that Monday or Tuesday when we get back, we would probably still allow for the referral to kind of take effect. Once a student is referred for services, I work with classroom teachers to build out a portfolio that involves 4 main components, and we'll talk about those in just a moment. Now, the first component is nationally normed assessment data. In order for a student to be screened for gifted services, there must be data from a nationally normed ability test. And Arlington uses 2 universal screeners at different grade levels. The first is that the students will take the Naglieri nonverbal ability test in 1st grade. This is an assessment that includes only nonverbal assessment items, so they won't find any verbal items or any quantitative items on this assessment, and it gives us a measure sort of general intellectual ability. Second assessment occurs in 2nd grade, and any students that are new to APS that don't have an ability test score, and this is called the Cognitive Abilities Test, or COGAT. This test has a verbal, a quantitative, and a nonverbal component to it as well. The third option is if a student is in kindergarten and enters the screening process, we'll administer something called the Kaufman Brief Intelligence Test, which has a verbal and a nonverbal component. Some families may have outside testing that they can share with us that helps in this aspect of the portfolio. Now, depending on how students perform on these assessments, they automatically can enter the screening process, and that is another thing that we kind of talk about in that initial conversation that I have with classroom teachers. Second component of the screening process, or the portfolio that we create, is school-based achievement. Now, we will look at assessment data from classroom-based activities. It might be things that happen at the county level, so things like the Dibbles assessment data that we have or math inventory data that we have can be pretty valuable. If grade levels have administered SOLs, we can kind of factor that in. And then any individual honors or distinctions that we might find out about or know about from performance and the kids have shared with us, or information that parents share with us, can also be helpful in this particular aspect of the portfolio. The third component of the portfolio is sort of the qualitative piece where teachers and families alike can complete a survey of sorts that help them identify gifted characteristics and behaviors that they see across a variety of settings. When the classroom teacher fills it out, it tends to be what they see during the school day. When families fill it out, it tends to be what they see outside of the school day. And this really, again, helps us see strengths in the students. The components of those forms, you can see on the screen here, really get an exceptional ability to learn, apply knowledge, think creatively, productively, analytically, and kind of get at a student's exceptional ability to find motivation to succeed. Now, what we know about all students is that they're going to have varying profiles. They'll be very jagged. You might have some students that have exceptional ability to learn. We see a lot of evidence of that. And it may be coupled with maybe a relative lack of motivation. We might see some students be very creative in their thinking, whereas some are a little bit more risk averse and they don't want to put themselves out there. We might find students are incredibly willing to talk in class and some that are incredibly uninterested in sharing their ideas. And so we need to really kind of look at all of these different components, find the strengths, and focus on them to help us build out this component of the portfolio. The final component of the portfolio is demonstrated student performance when it comes to work that is designed for high ability kids. This might be advanced math resources we're using or language arts resources that we're using. It may be work related to primary source analysis or interpreting art, and anything that we can use that has a high ceiling, something that doesn't have a single right answer, that can be interpreted lots of ways. All of that is really valuable information for us when we're kind of building out this sort of portfolio. So this is the fourth and final component that we will use to help round out our understanding of each learner. Now, as we kind of transition into the visual and performing arts portfolios, they're very, very similar. Obviously, the products would be a little bit different in terms of what the art and music teachers are looking at. And what data we have in terms of honors and distinctions might, again, be more aligned to visual and performing arts. But a lot of the parent information forms and the teacher commentaries are very, very similar, focusing in on student strengths. Now, differentiation for art and how we kind of gather these samples may come from work that's done in the art classroom, but it may also happen in the child's homeroom class, because with the focus on arts integration, we see a lot of student products, both for art and for music, that we can kind of gather in multiple settings. So the identification process happens towards the end of a 90-day calendar, and that's 90 instructional days, so it's a long time. We will gather at school, a school-based eligibility committee will gather that typically involves administrators, classroom teachers, specialists like me, reading specialists, math coaches, arts and music teachers. Any staff member who knows and can contribute to this conversation is invited to kind of give that feedback and really help us understand the strengths of each child. Once we have those meetings, we reach an eligibility decision, which is then emailed to parents. If the child is found eligible, what we tend to do for the rising school year is create clusters of students that have maybe similar areas of eligibility, similar levels of interest, and create a cohort for the future teacher the next year to really have a purposeful planning cohort that they can work to support, as opposed to sort of sprinkling them sort of haphazardly about the different classrooms. So there's a lot of intentionality in how we create our cluster groups. Once those groups are placed and we start the new school year, I work with classroom teachers across grade levels to support their goals as it relates to working with their high ability and identified students. And this support may look different from year to year, from grade to grade, depending on maybe how long I've worked with a particular colleague in a particular grade level, teacher's level of comfort with some of the resources. So it does not always look the same in grades K through 5, but the intention is always the same, to build the capacity of the classroom teacher to help them provide support and differentiate for their students on a daily basis. If students are found ineligible, families can appeal that decision, starting with a local appeal, which comes right to the principal. If the decision is upheld, then families can appeal a second time. That would be a countywide appeal, which would involve members of the Gifted Services Administrative Office over in Syfax. Couple things: if you're interested, you're learning about gifted services for the first time, or you're hearing about it and you're not really sure what the world of gifted education looks like, the Virginia Association for the Gifted, the National Association for the Gifted, the website Supporting Emotional Needs of the Gifted are three really common and valuable resources to help kind of learn what's out there in terms of gifted education. The county has a really helpful webpage about sort of more local things about, what does our model look like and what is the role of the RTG in a building. And if you have any sort of just general questions, the APS Gifted Services website has a great FAQ page where you can probably get a lot of the information that you need. And you can also kind of follow them on Twitter if that's a preferred means of kind of gaining access to information. So my hope is that if you have any questions, you would feel comfortable reaching out to me. My contact information is here. I think gaining clarity around this process is always like my top priority. And I never want you to feel like you can't ask questions if you're curious or you're just wondering about any aspect of gifted services, from what the services themselves look like to eligibility and how we reach our decisions. So please reach out should you have any questions. I hope this video has been helpful and informative in some way.